Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good day, wherever you are. We're here for Friday Inspiration for Photographers. I am Karen Hutton, and today I'm so excited. Brenda Tharp is in the house. Woo, woo. And she is now. You'll notice occasionally I'm looking down. That's because I'm managing all the different things that go on in these live streams. But Brenda, thank you for being here.
I am stoked, really. This is just, I love doing these things. And it's just, it's all just ad-libbed, ad hoc, and it's perfect. It's great.
Yeah, it is totally ad hoc, and I love it that way. I mean, I'm always happy to, really drill it down and prepare it, but it's so much fun, more fun when it's ad hoc. Besides, I got a whole bunch of questions for you. Oh my God. And I'm so excited because, our ships tend to cross in the night. We know each other, we see each other at events, not so much in the last couple of years,
Yeah.
but we're constantly on the go. You just came back from Botswana.
Yes.
How
Yeah.
was that? I haven't even had a chance to ask you that. How was that?
It was awesome. And, it's always wonderful to just, Africa just has a special place in my heart. And the wildlife, yes, but it's being there in that experience. And I posted on Facebook, and I also threw it up onto Instagram. I had one night, as the story goes quickly, we were going to bed. Well, actually, the pre-story is one night, one of our participants who was in the furthest tent out, the next morning, she said she didn't sleep well because the lions were roaring and huffing outside of her tent. Well, they weren't literally outside of her tent, but it sounded like it, and they were on that end. Well, the next night, I'm lying in bed and I said, Jed, I can't stand it. I have to get up and record this. So I throw on clothes and I go outside, and I'm using my phone with my little voice memo thing, right? And the lions are surround sound at this point, and it's a small group, and they're talking to each other, and they're probably just saying, hey, I'm over here, got anything going on over there? But it's just this sound, and it's hitting here. It's just resonating in my chest. And everybody that worked there was out on the deck looking out with a spotlight to find the lions. And I thought, how special is that? These people live there and they work there, and they must hear this all the time. And yet they were just as drawn to it as I was. So it's a primeval.
I don't think it ever gets old. I really don't, even if you live there.
It was just amazing. And so I put a still shot with the video or with the recording, but I put two voice memos together quickly and threw it up there because I needed to share that experience. And it wasn't about a photograph,
Right. Well, I mean, really, so much the end result of a photograph is so often not really about the photograph. It's about the photograph happens as the result of all these other things, which is one of the things I wanted to talk to you about too. I mean, I do want to go talk about Botswana, but I want to make sure we get to your jewelry. But you talk about expressiveness and healing images and about opening your eyes, there's opening your eyes, and then there's opening your eyes and responding, which is what you did. And that is so much a part of the process of making images. And you talk about that in a really unique way. And I really wanted to dive into that with you, and then have that take us places, because it always does.
Yeah. Ask away.
Well, so when you say, like, I even wrote it down because I'm like, that's really interesting, because a lot of people say, it's about your expression, your photographic expression, but define what you mean by that, because I have a feeling you mean something a little different than what a lot of people mean by find your expression. You even have a book. What is it called? Expressive
nature photography.
Right. What do you mean by that in that context?
Well, in the beginning chapters, the first two chapters are really about the heart, H-E capital A-R-T of photography, and finding your voice or your vision, and it's, for me, the expressive photography, whether it's nature or street photography or anything, it's about getting in touch with your feelings, your reaction to what you're seeing and what you're experiencing. And we can all make technically good pictures of something that's right in front of us. But if we are getting in touch with our passion about the subject, or we're excited about the light, or whatever it is, we can express that in the photograph. And so I often talk about clarifying your vision. And what does that mean? Well, for me, clarifying your vision is simply figuring out what it is I'm trying to say with the photograph that I'm about to make. What is exciting me in this situation? Is it the textures? Is it the awesome light? Is it color harmony, the gesture of a moment? And when I answer that question, then a lot of the other things that need to be figured out kind of get answered. Because
Right.
if it's about the gesture, then I may need a faster shutter speed to capture that gesture, So shutter speeds, focal length, point of view, position, perspective, all of those end up getting answered when I stay in touch with what it is I'm trying to say.
So two questions pop into my mind. One is, isn't it interesting how, because, like I'm 100%, 150% on your page. That's exactly how I talk about it too. And of course, I'm sure you got laughed out of the room when you first started talking about what are your feelings and all that kind of stuff. Because everybody, especially in landscape, they'll roll their eyes and go, oh my God, which takes me back to the day. My favorite story is being out with a group of people photographing and me taking in the scene and looking at what I liked about it, and then thinking about what settings I wanted to use to express that, and having a guy who was standing next to me interpret that as meaning I needed help, and reaching over and this is the adjustment you need, and fixing my camera for me.
That's where you learn to clarify your vision internally. Although I suggest to people that they articulate it out loud in the beginning if they need to.
Yeah, because that was my next question, was when you go somewhere like Botswana or any workshop, how do you then lead people through that process of getting, well, first of all, defining what you just said, and then getting from there to the shot?
It's a fine balance, especially if you're photographing a place like Botswana, because you don't want to be chattering away while people are trying to photograph whatever moment or gesture or scene that they're seeing. And so I will just sort of intersperse comments about, watch your shutter speeds, or look at that beautiful tail, or look at the way the lion is lining up with the tree branch so beautifully. And I'll throw a couple of things out there for people to think about, trying to get them to go beyond just the record shot, because, oh my God, it's a lion in a tree,
Right.
and you get that shot, and then you look at what else you can do with it. And so I sometimes have to coach people that way to get past that initial excitement. But out in the field, like if we're in Zion, for example, I will talk about what I see and what I'm feeling, and just throw that out a little bit to have people start thinking about getting beyond the predictable and the sort of record shot, if you will. Because with landscape, as you know, it's tough to do something different. You've got the wide view, and and it's so dependent on light, the good light or the right light for that scene.
Yeah.
And so I try to get people to go beyond the big scene and really find something that's beyond the icon, something unique, and maybe that excites you, personally, because that's so important.
How do you, so when you talked about the tail lining up with the tree, like in Botswana, look at the lion's tail and how it lines up with the tree. Does anybody ever say to you, how did you see that?
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you tell them?
I get that a lot.
I bet you do.
I think that the answer usually is, I don't know. No, the answer, because, in some ways, there is no way to easily define that, but it comes from inside. It comes from years of being open and celebrating what's right in front of me and just enjoying it for what it is, and not necessarily putting a label on what it is, but just looking at it from maybe a design point of view, or how, I mean, shoot, we were photographing animals in grasses and they were mostly obscured by the grass. So
Right.
you would wait for the face to emerge and the eyes to be there. And that picture is more exciting to me than just a straight old shot of a animal standing in a cut down meadow where you can see all of its legs and, you know, every inch of it,
Right.
because it's more expressive. It tells a story about how well they hide and the camouflage that they need to survive. So some of those pictures are just as exciting. And I don't know if I answered that. I might have just wandered off.
Yeah, no. I mean, wandering off is good. I mean, it's a conversation.
Where was I?
We're having it over tea, coffee.
I'm having it over just a ball mason jar of water. Already had
Nice.
my coffee.
Mine's a thermos, a ceramic lined thermos of tea.
Oh, good for you.
I just switched to ceramic lined because I realized, wow, it sits all day in metal and stainless steel, and it's citrus. And I'm like,
yeah,
that can't be good. Yeah, that's where it's the comment. So we have two chats going on. We have comments happening in Facebook, and I've got that over here. And then we have for those of you watching, my subscribers, I always invite them into these Zoom calls. So we've actually got them here. So they comment in the chat too. And one of them is saying that's where what you're talking about, that's where a true photographer has to have patience, which I agree. But I also think it's patience with not just sitting, like being patient, waiting for the outer world, but being patient with yourself as well in the process to, like right now, I'm doing my artist voice photography retreat. We're doing it online, which is allowing us to break this whole process down into, bite-sized pieces and really take time which you really can't do on location because, like, what are you going to do? An academic course in Botswana? You came to Botswana to see Botswana. Yeah. So it's like, that is, I mean, in the perfect world, that's the place to bring that out into the world, the process. But this online thing has really been amazing because I'm able to really slow the process down and break it down. And a lot of what's coming out of the conversations is the amount of patience, compassion, loving care you have to give yourself because of all that we call them the mind weasels. And that comes from my friend Katie Crooks, who is a singer and a hypnotherapist. So the mind chatter that happens, which is a lot of what causes us not to be able to see because it's so noisy in there, you can't even see. Learning how to be, the whole thing about getting into your body, but then also being patient and forgiving of yourself for having it. Because as soon as you get in your body, you really start noticing them. And that's kind of the stage everybody's at going, whoa, it's almost overwhelming. And the thing is, it always is, but you just don't notice it because you have enough distraction. So having a way to move through that is really important. But I think I don't know why I got off on this tangent, but when you talked, because I asked you the question, does anybody ever ask you
patience?
Patience. And how did you see that? I missed that. And those two kind of go together because
they do.
You can be patient all day with a scene and still miss that.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that happens too, because we all have mental baggage, and I'll be the first one to admit that I go out in the field some days and I can't see beauty if I fell over it. I'm tired. I've got too much going on in my mind about prepping for this workshop, or I've got a Zoom call, or I've got this or that going on. And I need to really get rid of all that. And some days it's not so easy for us to do that. Other days I can really just be in the moment out there. And, you mentioned about the mind weasel.
And that is so potent. That's so potent what you just said. I don't mean, I want you to finish, but that's so potent what you just said, because someone at your level still has it. And I contend that, having ways to cope with that, move through it, or, other things is really key in being able to capture the kinds of images that we're talking about here, which is why I've had Jenny Clift, who's an EFT tapping coach, and my friend Katie, who's a hypnotherapist and a performer, and other people talking about, different, and I have a system that I teach my people, but having a way to, shift and ground and focus so that you can do what you need to do when you do have a lot going on. I think
Yeah.
it's hard and it's valuable. And I interrupted you on your way
No,
to.
that's okay. That's fine. It's a conversation. But sometimes it's music. I find people can use music and maybe just put headphones in to sort of close out everything around them when they're photographing. And some of my students have found that to be a successful way to just get rid of the chatter. And also, when we were talking about patience, it's easy when you're out in the field and you're looking at the landscape or whatever it is you're photographing, and you think, you're waiting for the light. And how long do you wait? Darn it, the light's not here yet, Then you start, this little voice says, well, maybe we should just give it up and go find something we can photograph because the light's not happening for this shot, and that can be a real trap. And even with whether it's wildlife, we had that decision. We had that decision about, do we wait and watch these lions mate again, which was kind of interesting. But do we wait and see what might happen after this mating session? Because they'll mate, it's over in like seconds almost, and then 15 minutes later, she'll say, okay, I'm ready again. And they'll do this for like every 15 minutes for 5 to 7 days. It's amazing.
Wow.
So at some point, they know that it's worked. And they're like, okay, we're done. See ya, bye. And that's it. But in between, there's all of the gentleness and the frolic, like the rolling around and the things cats do,
Right.
And he is so patient and he will lick her and he does all this lovey-dovey stuff. And those were moments that were worth it, not the act itself, because that's just kind of weird looking, but but
let's be honest.
All the foreplay, was really it. And so at what point do you say it's time to move on? We've got the shot. Does everybody have the shot they think they want from this, and move on? And if it's not animals, and if it's just you looking at a scene and waiting for the light, it's the same thing. You have to be patient, and maybe you won't get any other photograph that afternoon. But if you wait for it, and that's an informed decision, I should say, too.
Right.
But if you wait for it because it looks like it has potential, you may be gifted with this just amazing photograph because you waited. So you don't want to just hop off and try to take too many photographs, and come away with everything just being so-so.
Right. And the other thing too, I think, is to remember that even in any given situation where you're waiting for something, there's just sitting there waiting, watching, looking at your watch. There's also looking around to see what other little stories there are.
Absolutely.
And you do that brilliantly. And then, I think you should come home with a book. Like when I say a book, I mean a book of your experience, meaning all the different stories and viewpoints, and from the small to the big, and you're there to get the actual thing, and maybe that happens, maybe it doesn't. But I've gone out for what I thought was a thing, like a sunset, or I thought, well, I'm going to go get whatever it is, and then because I do that, that thing never actually happened, or I get kind of distracted over here and that thing didn't happen, but I got some amazing thing here that I was like, that was magic.
Yeah.
And I honestly think that, because this is what I always tell my people, is you get yourself if you learn how to get into the zone, it's almost like things conspire around you to bring, in this really cool quantum sort of way, the things to you that are your own unique thing that day.
Absolutely. And I think that's so valid, that
I do too.
We have to remain open. And yes, because we make a living from our photography, sometimes you've got a plan to go out and get that thing, because that kind of image may do well in the decor market or whatever. So there's a certain amount of production that may have to happen, but the greater portion of it for me is really just going out without a plan and putting myself in a situation that I just know I'm going to find something amazing, and being open to it and believing that I will see it.
Yes. And I think belief is part of it. This is all the woo-woo stuff, but it's the stuff that makes the more empirical, like I have to get this for this type of image or this image for production. I find that takes care of itself pretty easily if I'm doing the whatever the woo-woo quantum, zone thing. It just all kind of meshes and works together. And
well, and very often those are the images, what you just said, those images often do better than we realize. That we're going out with this plan in mind, and then we find these other things, and it's because our passion and excitement for what we saw gets infused into the way we frame it and the light on it and everything. And those are the pictures that very often resonate more than just another thing.
I know it's magical. Okay, there's some really cool comments coming in from both sides of our world. So I'm going to look at Facebook. So John Dukes is saying, hi, John. I always find that I return to the same landscape several times to get the great shot. I do too. And usually it's someplace I love. So other cool things are going on there as well. It's amazing how light can change a scene so much. So true. And it does require a lot of patience. So that's like, absolutely true. And then, blended with this sort of inner to outer, it's a circle really. But it's for me, because so many people don't think about the inner to outer part, I focus on it a lot, but that's because once it goes inner to outer, then it's easy to pick up the outer and then bring it in for the, well, did that work? Did it, what else? What do I need to shift, and then you make your adjustment and then do it all over again. And it becomes like a creative circle of creative force almost. And
the more you do it, the more second nature it all becomes. So people have asked, like, how did when you said people ask, how did you see that? Well, for a while, I even carried a checklist. It was a 3x5 card, and it had things to look for, things to remind myself to look for, because
remember to be conscious.
Yes, because initially I was much more structured. I have a computer science degree, which is kind of shocking to me still, because I'm really more right-brained, but there is that structure that I got from my dad's side, and that structure would have me locked into a specific thing. And for an example, I had a Fuji X-Pan film camera, it was panorama. It was great. I bought that. I bought 4 lenses, stuck them in the bag. I was going to use this like crazy. And I'd get all done with a photo session, and I'd be putting my 35 millimeter regular camera back in the bag and go, oh, shoot, I never pulled out the X-Pan, because I wasn't expanding my mind. I was stuck in that rut of using what was familiar. And 9 times out of 10, it was too late to use the X-Pan. And so I made these checklists about, would a panorama work? Do I need a filter? And this is going way back early on to remind me, what about a multiple exposure or an intentional camera motion? What else can I do here? And
that's now such good advice.
That card is tattered and put into a journal somewhere, but because it's in here now,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And there's a comment here in the chat that says, I find that treating it all with loving kindness is key. Oh my God, that is so true.
Wow,
whether it's the mind weasels or waiting for the light or finding the perfect image, they're all part of the moment, which lives in loving kindness.
Yeah.
I keep telling all the people I work with, in fact, I always have this right here, and people laugh, but if I say it long enough and explain it long enough, you'll get it. It is a quantum frequency that literally, you hold it over your head and it changes everything. Love is the answer. It's like ask any question and pretty much love is the answer to it. And loving kindness. So what's the answer for trying to remember and trying to show up and be more present? Loving kindness, pretty much, because that's where you give yourself permission.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you got to have permission before anything new can happen.
Yep.
There's some other comments here. Yeah. And there's days that you'll come back without any images, depending on your state of mind. And honestly, there's days I come back. Well, I almost never come back without images now, but I used to, but
Because you're a
sometimes,
pro.
well, yeah, I mean, sometimes you're just discerning,
No, yeah,
or
exactly.
sometimes I'm being too much of a pain in my own butt. And then sometimes it wasn't about the images, it was about the experience. And I just really wanted to soak it in.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's like going for a photo walk. Yeah, I remember those, where every picture is a different viewpoint on how everyone sees things. I love, yeah. Remember when we used to do all those big photo walks?
Oh, yeah, yeah,
That was so fascinating. I love that.
it was.
Um,
It's challenging because if you're a person who is used to working alone and immersing yourself in nature and whatever, and
mhm,
suddenly you're on a photo walk and you've got a whole bunch of people and the chatter is maybe about, the ball game last night. It's not
right.
necessarily about the photo. You have to tune some of that out to be able to get into your own space, even though the camaraderie of being on those walks was great fun. And it was inspiring because we would see somebody making a photo and you're like, oh, why didn't I see that?
Yeah,
And
right.
it was eye-opening and mind-opening. I loved them.
Yeah, and it was also because, you know, you get used to going out with an idea of what you're going to do on a photo shoot, a photo walk. I've got my camera in my hand. I'm out in the world. XYZ should happen. And photo walks always blew that out of the water.
Yeah.
It became a very different thing, but it gave you the opportunity to be in the moment and say, what's happening here? What's the story?
Yeah.
And I think that's always good. I think it's good to ask yourself questions like, you talked about putting, I used to do that too. When I was training horses, when I was learning to ride, even my dad taught me how to do that, put a little 3x5 card in my pocket and have the things I needed to remember to do when I was riding and practicing. But that's making yourself more present and aware. But it also reminds you to ask the questions. Would a
Yes.
panel work here? Would this be here? Because I think questions are important because it makes your mind answer.
Yeah.
Instead of having all the answers already, then there's no conversation.
One question for me now, and it fills in everything else, is the what if.
I love
And
that one.
yeah, just what if? What if I tried a multiple exposure? What if I got down lower and saw the world from the height of my dog's eyes? What if?
Yep.
And if you just remember to ask yourself that when you're out there, it's amazing the things that will flood in. It really
Yes.
is.
And I think the thing that within landscape, don't you find this to be true that a lot of what you just said, it allows everything to flow in, that when you're really being creative, it comes to you. It kind of like you
Yeah.
do your inner work, but then it comes to you. And that if you're trying really hard and trying to get the shot and blah, 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 it's almost akin to, you know,
Yeah.
doing this, and it's too much. It's like it almost makes everybody go, ah, it makes what
Yeah.
you're trying to do go, ah.
I know
I don't
that
know.
from experience because
Yeah.
there is an intensity to, I have a side that, if I could
Well,
be honest, is pretty intense. And, I have to work with that. Sometimes it's like, I got to get the shot. I got to get the shot. I got to get the shot. It's like, come on, just relax and let the shots come to you.
I will say that, yeah, I do the same thing, but which is why, like, I don't know, years and years and years ago, I was taught, excuse me, that's the part that's performance art. I always talk to people about this because I was a performer. I was a
Mhm.
photographer my whole life, but I was also a performer and a competitor. And so you had these moments where you had to perform at a high level all of a sudden now, and you had
Yeah.
to be fully present, all guns blazing right now. And your success depended on that. And so, I had to learn tools. And when I got to photography, I was like, there's a lot of that here. So, I use those same tools, and those
Oh,
are the ones
yeah.
that I teach my folks now, because that's the thing that stumps you every time. That'll trip you and make you face plant every single time.
Yeah, I'm a hidden closet performer. A long, long time ago, I thought I was going to be a folk singer, living life on the road, like Joan Baez style or whatever. So that puts
Oh,
me
that's
in the
awesome.
age category there. But dad had other plans. Dad was like, you can't make a living from this, music. Are you kidding? That's just a hobby. And I was self-taught on the guitar, and I had near perfect pitch, which was
Oh,
uncommon,
wow.
but that was great. And so I did a little bit of performing, but it wasn't going to go anywhere because dad said, no, you're not going to make a living from this. So photography was also in my life. My dad had been a photographer, but he was a documenting, like he just documented our family trips.
Right.
An interesting twist happened when he taught me photography. I took it in a direction of opening up to so much that was around me. And we would go backpacking together. And dad was all about getting to the top of the pass in record time. So he'd say, oh, just took us 11 minutes and 16 seconds. And I'd say, yeah, but did you see those beautiful lady slippers back there in the woods? And I had stopped to photograph them. And I opened up my dad's eyes,
Oh,
which
wow.
is
So he listened.
he listened, and he
Wow.
started doing more nature photography, and it was really, really cool.
Wow.
Just
That's
because you don't
really
think you're going to
cool.
have an impact on your parents, they always have an impact on you, but what can you do to give back? And I gave him that gift of slowing down and opening up and seeing what was around you, that it wasn't just about getting to the mountaintop in record time.
So that might, I don't know, but all of this might tie into the other thing. So the thing that's just, I'm telling everybody else this, the thing that like, I've been thinking, I want to talk to Brenda. I want to talk to, you didn't know that because I didn't get that far, but we ended up having a chat about the other things we do. We're photographers, but a lot of us have other art forms that we do. And I was talking about one of mine, and you said, you do jewelry. I said, oh my God, you do jewelry. And I want to hear more about that, because there's this whole thing about expression. It isn't, what's the right way to say that? So if you want to express something, it doesn't just have to be in one art form.
Right.
And a lot of photographers have other things they do. And I'm always curious to know why and what it is and why that thing and how that fulfills them and how it relates and how it doesn't. And I have all those questions for you. So how did it start that because your jewelry is incredible. It's artisan jewelry.
Well,
How did
thank
that
you.
happen?
It happened because I was too cheap to pay for all the jewelry in the Sundance catalog. Seriously.
Oh my God.
Well,
Oh my God.
I've always loved the Southwest look and the Native
Yeah.
American jewelry and
Yeah.
all of this, right? In fact, I have a piece on that I
Oh, I
made
love that.
that has, turquoise, semi-precious stones, sterling silver, and born and raised in New Jersey, but I was a Western girl in my heart. And so when I did come west to Colorado and then California, I was surrounded by a bit more opportunity to get that kind of jewelry and to see how they were inspired by the nature around them to create their jewelry. So of course the
Wow.
Sundance catalog was awesome in some of the stuff that they had in there. And I remember looking at it one day and I thought, I could make this. And, 6 months later, I'd look again and say, I could probably make this. And at one point, this little voice just said, why don't you try?
What if?
And so I just went to a jewelry store and the regular, what do you call it? The craft jewelry,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
I bought some beads and I bought some silver findings and a bead board. And that's to allow you to lay everything out, and I started playing. And oh gosh, 10 years later, I haven't done it recently, and there's a reason why that's happened, but I did so much. And every place I traveled, I had to go into a bead shop. So I had beads from Africa, I had beads from Ireland, beads from Juneau, Alaska, and it was just like I couldn't stop. And so I made like 46 bracelets, probably 80 pairs of earrings, about 27 necklaces, who knows. And I was just wearing them myself. And how many can you actually wear, right? I mean, in a given year, if you
I
wore one every day, I guess you could, but it was just piling up. And so somebody said, you ought to sell this. And I was like, I didn't think it was good. And they were like, no, 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 you really ought to sell this. So I opened up an Etsy shop, and I was
Wow.
shocked. I sold, like, within 2.5 weeks, I sold 9 pieces. Woohoo! That was
Wow.
exciting, right? But then it kind
Yeah.
of plateaued, and then suddenly jumped up around Valentine's Day and Mother's Day, and then it plateaued again. And then I learned something, and that was, this was a passion and a hobby that I didn't want to turn into a business,
Wow. That's a great
because
discovery.
now I was having to produce to fulfill the needs of my followers. I mean, okay, they had seen the same bracelet. If it hadn't sold, it had been on there for 8 weeks, and they wanted new things.
Mm-hmm.
And that meant I was having to produce new things. And it started to kind of conflict with the photography in terms of having to make new pieces of jewelry. So I took the Etsy shop down. This is going back a couple of years now. I took it down, and I just created for me and for giving away to friends and family as
Oh,
gifts.
I love
And
that.
yeah, and that was better for me. I mean, I
Right.
think it's wonderful, but if you went onto Etsy and you typed in semi-precious stones, sterling silver, there were like 6,000 shops that came up or something. It was
Right.
huge.
Right.
So you're like photography, you're a very small fish in a very large pond when
Mm-hmm.
you are out there in a thing like even Smug Mug, Photo Shelter. You're a small fish, and it was up to you to drive people to your web page or to your shop, in the case of Etsy, to see your work and to somehow convince them that they wanted yours. And that's a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
And it
It
was,
is.
I had two
It's two
mistresses.
two avenues of business, and one
Yeah.
is a lot of work.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Well, and photography alone is such a business of many hats, as you know. We've got a lot of different income streams happening,
Mm-hmm.
and to manage all of those was work enough. So I kept the jewelry making for what brings me joy. So these earrings are also
They're
earrings that I made.
beautiful. They're
And,
beautiful.
and I still get a lot of people saying, you should sell this stuff. And I'm like,
Well, but
maybe
see, the
when
great
I can't do photography anymore, I'll go back to jewelry. I don't know.
exactly. I mean, think about how many people, oh, I wanted to try it, but it probably won't, or I'm afraid. But I mean, why not try it? Because you learned that you love to do it. And so you learned, but I don't want to do a business. I want to do it this way, which
Yeah.
is, to me, that's an expansion and that's an extension. And I mean, you find, well, the reason I ask this question is when I made the promo for our little talk, I found this image, this incredible blue water. There was a couple that had the same shades of blue, and then this jewelry piece had the exact same, and it looked like the water in the stone. And I wondered, how often do you do it that way? Is it more place oriented? Like, what are the parallels that you find between the two? Because I saw that one and I was like, wow, that's
Oh,
really
I'm so thrilled to hear that, because, when you're in your own work, sometimes it's hard to see some of those connections that people
yeah.
outside of it can pick up on right away. And I've always been drawn to the colors of earth, the colors of nature. And so blue is one of my favorites. Turquoise is one of my favorites.
Mm-hmm.
And turquoise and purple, they're healing colors for me. And and yet I'm not opposed to the deep oranges and the red oranges of the Southwest. I am
Right.
drawn to the Southwest in terms of its landscape and the colors of the earth and sky. And so those definitely play into how I choose the beads and the color harmonies and contrast that I'm putting together and making the jewelry. And
Yeah.
if you can see these are hammered, right? Now I didn't
Yep.
hammer this piece. I've not gone the metal smithing route yet, although I could do this.
Yeah.
But that reminded me of the hardened mud flows that you see in the Southwest, where it's ripple rock, and in its age, eons of water flowing over that mud, and then something compressed on top of it and it dried, and now you have this fossilized ripple rock. And
Right.
that's what this reminds me of, is that
That's so
something
cool.
I've seen. So
That is
yeah.
so cool. I mean, you may end up, I don't know. I mean, I know you're not trying to sell your jewelry, and just selling it isn't even the thing, but it's just funny with your work more than anybody that I've seen, because your photography is so stunning. But I keep seeing, the pieces that I've looked up online, and that the images that you sent me, they just look so paired with your work that there's like, the way my mind works, not that I need 5,000 businesses to run either, but I keep seeing them paired as a product paired. Like,
That is
because,
something
I
for me
put,
to think about.
yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know. It's like it's just this thing that popped into my mind. And I was like, I'll just tell you that I see that.
Well,
Yeah. And
that's
like
actually a
Cameron
good
saying,
idea.
I don't think you need to sell your jewelry. It sells itself. That's kind of what I was thinking too. And
Well, thank you so much, Cameron, because I've tried to figure this out. I've thought about having a website where the home page has two links, jewelry and photography. And then
why
I
not?
decided, well, I thought about that. And then I decided, no, it's got to be a separate website. And so it will be at some point. It'll be outside of the Etsy shops of the world and so forth. And it will probably be its own website. And the images, the pieces that I make will be up there, and let it sell itself.
Do
And
you,
that's
because you live in a town that has galleries and stuff, is your photography in galleries at this point?
no. And Santa Rosa, well, I used to be in some galleries, but not here in Santa Rosa. And things have just really changed a lot. It's
Yeah.
very challenging to get into galleries.
Yeah, it really
And
is.
I was listening to your talk with Lori. I think it was last week's
Yeah.
talk that you had with Lori about, she's spending some time getting connected to galleries and interior decorators and designers and so forth now. And I've been doing some of that too, but I have a little bit of a catch here. And you may or may not know this, but Jed, my life partner, and I decided that we were going to go on the road full time
Oh,
and do our
I didn't know that.
photography full time. So we bought a Sprinter van, and whether it was the wisest decision or not, we decided to convert the camper ourselves. And so here we are playing plumber, electrician, carpenter, and assembly, and whatever, mechanical engineer, designer, all of those things, into making this our home on wheels. And the plan is that we will continue to teach our field workshops, but we will be immersed in and living in nature so that we can
Wow.
continue to write our books and continue. I will be taking some jewelry making supplies with me, because my hope is that when I'm relaxed and I'm out there and not in Santa Rosa, that I will get back into doing more jewelry. And so your idea just sparked something with me, like it would be fun to sell a pair of earrings that were matched with a small photo. So it's like a tiny
Yeah.
treasure that went with it.
Yeah.
That would
Exactly.
be
And
kind of fun.
maybe even it's printed on something,
Yeah,
that is
yeah,
easy to do, that you don't have to do it, but I mean, it's easy to
right.
get. And that it's an interesting material, or just a
Yeah,
print,
yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
Mark is saying he remembers that you talked about that last year. I guess you talked about the Sprinter van, about going on the
Yeah,
road.
probably on some of the Zoom webinars that I've
Mm-hmm.
done,
Mm-hmm.
for different photo clubs and stuff. I mentioned that we were in the midst of it. And it sounds like just this broken record right now for us. We are 85% finished. And so we should be done within the next 2.5 months. And it is so exciting. It's scary. At the
Yeah.
same time, we have been renting this house, and so we're not having to sell anything, but we've sold off 50% of our belongings. We've kept only the treasures that we have accumulated from our travels in the world and
Wow.
from family, the things that are special. So that'll go into a locker, and then we're going to see how it goes. And you won't see me doing any YouTube videos in bikinis and, you know,
Why?
whatever the 20 and 30 something crowd is doing, but
Well,
but we
you have to
will
get
be.
the same hat they all
Yeah,
do, and have them take a bunch of pictures of you from behind with a
right,
serape.
right.
Yeah.
So, but we are planning that we're going to do some YouTube tutorials. And Thomas Heaton, if you know him
I know
from
his
England,
name.
yeah, know him. He has done this now for a couple of years, and he just shares his experience of being out there to photograph that particular morning or evening or day, whatever he's doing. And we're hoping to be able to build some career income around using YouTube, but we're not mentally, we're not quite there yet. So I'm trying to put some of that together while we're still doing the building, and it's been a little overwhelming, which is why the jewelry kind of took a back seat. I just had to
Mm-hmm.
stop something, you know.
Well, I love that you're talking about it, because, everybody talks about, oh, make your dreams come true. And they make, they make living on the road look like, oh, and then we just get up and then the sun rises
And
and
we go
it's a,
surfing, and then
yeah,
we go,
it's an F ton of work. I'll tell you. I mean, because
oh
I
yeah.
go out for weeks at a time. I don't go out. We haven't done it full time, although we keep going. So my husband's still working full time, so we can't quite do it. But I could take mine out on the road. But we talk about it. But I mean, we're out enough to know.
Yeah.
Okay, this is.
Yeah, there's all the realities of
Mhm.
internet and the things you do at home, laundry. It's like you don't just go out into the wilderness and do laundry. You've got to find a town with a laundromat. You have to think
Yeah,
some of those things through. And we also don't just want to wander aimlessly, because we are very conscious of the fact that we're using fossil fuels to get
right,
around,
right.
and they don't make an electric Sprinter van, and probably never will. It would take a lot of battery power
I
for
know.
that 4x4 170 Sprinter to go down the road. But we plan on going to, it's kind of like David Kingham and Jennifer Renwick, and also Sarah Marino and her husband Ron. They go out and they spend a month in an area.
Right.
So
I
they're
love
not
doing
just
that.
zigzagging everywhere. They're immersing themselves. And that's
Right.
what our plan
I think
is to
immersion is really,
spend
really important.
time. Yeah. So,
Besides, zigzagging is exhausting. Oh
oh,
my God. That's the fast track to burnout right there.
absolutely. So we'll see. And part of what we're doing is, because we have to have goals. That's the structured side of me. It's like,
Yeah.
we've got to have a plan. We have to have goals.
Yep.
So part of it is that we're looking for home. And it's a place where eventually we would retire into, permanently. But we wanted to get out of the crowded Bay Area, the expensive Bay Area.
Right.
And while it's absolutely beautiful here, we want to be surrounded by nature more than other houses. So we are looking for what feels right for both of us as a place that we would like to either buy or build a cabin, cottage, house, whatever it's going to be. Maybe it's going to be a yurt. I don't know.
And so really, what you're talking about? You're talking about living your life as if it were your art.
Yeah.
You're talking about life art. You're talking about creating a life the same way you create a photograph. And I think
Yeah.
my feeling is that when you find something like that is a truth, that becomes like a true line, instead
Yeah.
of like a,
It used to be that our requirements for where we lived had to have a FedEx office or a drop box so you could
right.
drop your slides off to the editors. You had to have certain services that were really important like that. And now the requirements are surrounded by nature, or have it be easily accessible, and surrounded by beauty. and living simply a more minimalist life for two people in 100 square feet. That's
Right.
definitely going to require minimalism,
Mm-hmm.
and learning about ourselves and each other in that process. And then figuring out if we expand beyond this to a more permanent place, which we will in a few years, I'm sure.
Right.
Finding what meets what resonates for both of us. And that's interesting too, because it's not just one person, but now it's two of us.
Exactly.
We
I
have
know. That's what appeals to
agreement.
me too. I mean, so, some
Yeah.
people are doing it, some people are thinking about it, and some people are actually planning it, which is brilliant because I mean, to wrap this up, because we're getting close to the end here, but what a conversation. Thank you
Oh gosh,
for,
this has
for
been
doing this
fun.
and being so open and everything, because I mean, so many people are afraid to try something new from, oh, I only shoot this way, or I only use this camera, or I don't know, what if I'm not good enough, or is this a good photo too? I don't want to try something that dramatic. That's too much. I mean, you're a living and breathing example of what art really is, an expression of who you are in the world.
Well, that's my goal. So I'm glad that that's coming across that way. But as I've shared, there's always those parts of us that it's a constant work in progress. We are
Always.
a work in
Exactly.
process, and I hope that never stops, because that means I'm always learning how to be the better me.
And that's the loving kindness at work.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
where, what do you, I, in my, not that I've written many books. Written a few ebooks, but one of them was, finding your artistic voice in photography, right? Or
yeah.
finding your voice or whatever it was. And I can't even remember the name. It was about finding your voice. But the point, and I taught a Kelby One class, and it pretty much is the thing that I talk about for this very reason, because there's this one place that if you can figure out how to dwell, it will inform everything in your life, in your, it's like almost why we're here, is to create in this way.
Absolutely. And I'm so grateful to hear you say this and to know the work that you're doing. It is so important, because there's so many classes that are about the technique and the technical and how to do this, how to get, layers working and blah, 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 blah. And all of that is valid. We all need to hone our skills in order to translate and to express what we're feeling. We need all of those skill sets. But none of that works as effectively as it could if we're not starting with what's in here. And
Exactly.
more people like us, need to be teaching that,
Yeah.
and getting people to open themselves up and not be afraid of that.
Yeah. And what I learned in life is, it isn't just about opening. You got to be grounded and focused and, really centered within yourself, because, just opening, what are you opening up to? How do
Yeah.
you know what's true and what's a lie? And how do you know what you really love? And how do you not get stuck in your head? And how do you not get triggered into, like, there's got to be this one place
Yeah.
that, and that's something I learned the hard way in life. There's many ways to get there, hence having different kinds of people over to chat about, who they are and what they do, because, I think sometimes people get tired of listening to me say it over and over again. So, I just bring in people, and they're all my friends. I'm not just doing this to talk to everybody. It's like, you know what? We are creating a story. We're creating our own narrative about what we think is important and what creates art. And what is art? Art
And
is your point of view and
I
expression.
agree. And I think too that artists tend to be solitary when they're making their art. And I think that having opportunities to have dialogues like this, conversations, are so important,
I do too.
because they inspire. If one person gets one aha moment from this conversation we've had,
Right.
then it was worth it for that alone. And it was worth it just because I got ideas from you,
Yay.
and the sharing. And so I think it's so important, because we can tend to feel like we're in an isolated bubble,
Yep.
when we're doing our work, and like, not enough people are seeing it, or does anybody even care if I fell off the planet, kind of feelings come up. And
Yeah, I know the feeling.
yes, so it's like, and I'm not doing enough, to get out there. And we need to just let go of all that and get involved in conversations with
Right.
friends and about the things we're passionate about.
Exactly.
So
Exactly. Oh, so good, Brenda. Thank you so much. Okay, tell everybody, I will put the links to your world in the comments, both on face everywhere, that I post
okay.
this, and YouTube as
Good.
well. So but tell everybody verbally where they can find you and keep track of you and see your
Well,
world.
you can keep track of me through the website, basically, brendatharp.com. And I have an archive at SmugMug, which is brendatharpphotography.com. And there you'll see a whole lot more imagery. My website is currently in progress because I've been teaching a lot of workshops. And so the focus of that has been more about the workshops that are going to be happening and less about gallery presentation,
Mhm.
and that's shifting. And I'm on Instagram, and it's Brenda Tharp Photo with underscores in between. We have 2 Instagram accounts right now. One is a photographic adventure, or our photographic adventure, I can't remember, but it's where Jed and I will post jointly, and it's about van building and van life, and it will eventually all be merged.
Oh
So
my gosh. That's so great. So
yeah,
send me all the links. I'll share
I
them with
will,
everybody.
because there's a lot of different ones. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's
So
so great. And you have these 2 incredible books on your website too, which people can purchase from there as well.
thanks. Yeah, we
Um,
didn't get a chance to talk about it, and that's okay. But the Extraordinary Everyday Photography book that Jed and I did together was about seeing beauty right where you are, right at your feet. And we're so excited because an Italian publisher just picked up on it, and the title is like Marveliosa La Fotografia or something, and
oh
it's
my,
just like so cool. The whole thing is in Italian, but I know enough to read some of it, and it's just like, this is awesome. So we're getting new life in that book in Italy. So
that is
really excited.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. All right. Well, we'll just put all the links there, and then if you want to, we can talk about that on another. Like
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
inviting everybody back,
Oh,
and
that would be awesome, really, because it's still photography, but it's really just a different approach. One
yep,
of the many things I do. So cool. I am so
yeah.
honored to have been here, Karen.
Oh
This
my
is
gosh.
awesome. And when we get up into your neck of the woods, which we will soon enough, we'll be able to give each other an awesome hug in
Oh, that
person.
will be great. And definitely get in touch, and we'll definitely stay in touch because I have all these other ideas. I sit and I talk to you and a few others out there. I'm like, what if, because I'm
Yeah.
like the what if queen too, but I have some other ideas too. Anyway, oh my God, we could just keep going, but I want to
I
honor
know.
people's time and end this at an hour. This was juicy and wonderful. Thank you. Thank you all for watching. Thank you
Yes.
guys who are here for being here. I love you all, and we'll be seeing you around campus.
Bye. And thank you, everyone, for being here.
Bye.
Bye.